What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm back here once again for a comprehensive NBA player prop preview. If this is your first time visiting this channel, I do this every single day. I share my screen, we go through all the key player props, we go through their lines, we talk about their matchups, I tell you what I like, I tell you what I don't, and I do all this so you have all the information that you need, whether you're betting multis, parlays, single bets, alternate lines, if you're looking at Hail Marys. I've got all the stats for you to help you make educated decisions when it comes to NBA betting. Now, in today's one, we're going to do exactly the same. I'll go through, I'll tell you what I like. I'm going to put my final picks in the pinned comment. Now, let's go. All right, so we're jumping into outlier.bet. If this is your first time seeing this channel, I'll let you know that in the description box of this video, I've got a link to Outlier, which is the app that I'm using. If you click on that link and you sign up, it gives you a 7-day free trial. You will not regret it. I've won a stack of money since making the switch. I encourage you to try it out because if you don't, just don't sign up anyway. So take advantage of that free trial. You know where that link is. Now let's get into it. We're looking at the Utah Jazz versus the Orlando Magic. If we're thinking about the players, we've got Walker Kessler as a game time decision, Paolo Banchero and Jonathan Isaac are game time decisions too. We'll kick it off with the Utah Jazz players first. Let's go with Colin Sexton. Now, his points line is at 17.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. In terms of the matchup, it's a difficult one against the Orlando Magic when it comes to scoring baskets. But Colin Sexton, he's covered this line in 7 out of his last 10 games. Against the Orlando Magic, he scored 10 points the last time they faced each other, 18 points prior to that. I think an alternate line for Colin Sexton could be a good play, but personally on this full 17.5, I'm not overly confident in take it, but I think he gets close on pure volume alone. His rebound props at 2.5. He's hit that in 3 of his last 10. Ain't nobody better than Colin Sexton rebounds. Looking at his assist prop, the line is at 5.5. He's only covered in 4 of his last 10. He's got a difficult matchup, and he's gone under both times against the Orlando Magic. So that 5.5 seems very high. I'd honestly be leaning to the under for Colin Sexton. Taking a quick look, under 5.5 is minus 140 though. So you're not getting the best odds. I'm sure there are better plays out there, but let's see what we can find. Lauri Markkanen, his points prop, that's a 20.5. In terms of the matchup, it's not an easy one, but it's not a hard one either. That's one of the softer points in the Orlando Magic defense, to be honest, that 3 position. But at 20.5, he's covered in 6 out of his last 10 in head-to-head matchups. He's covered this against the Magic in 3 consecutive games. So I don't mind that for Lauri, but he has been, I wouldn't say inconsistent. He's just not as aggressive as he was, let's say, last year or even compared to the start of this year. But looking at his rebound prop, that's at 8.5. The matchup is a good one. Psych, I got that wrong. It's a tough one. It's a difficult matchup. 8.5, he's covered in 4 out of the last 10, and he's gone under the last 2 games against the Orlando Magic. So there's Lauri. Now, John Collins, I haven't bet on him for quite some time, but earlier in the season, I was absolutely hammering his props. And we can see why I haven't been betting on him. He's been quite inconsistent as of late. His prop is 13.5. He has covered this in 6 out of his last 10. The matchup's not good or bad, but he did score 20 points the last time he faced the Orlando Magic back in November. I wouldn't say his role has changed, but the Utah Jazz are always playing around with their role. They've changed from Keontae George. Colin Sexton sometimes plays point guard. Jordan Clarkson has spent some time. It's just a lot of players in and out. Now they've got Markkanen playing the 3. Sometimes he plays the 4. John Collins sometimes plays the 4. Sometimes they have Kessler at the 5. Yeah, there are a lot of chopping and changing. So if you're very close to the Utah Jazz and their rotations and what's happening, you can probably find a lot of good value in them. I'm personally not too close to them at all. Let's check Keontae George out real quick. His points props at 13.5. It's plus money. The matchup's not good or bad. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Scored 6 points the last time he played the Magic. Assist-wise, lines at 5.5. He's covered this in 4 out of his last 5 games, though. But the matchup is a difficult one. And the last time he played the Magic, he finished on 3 assists. So I'm personally not overly excited by any of these Utah Jazz props, but let's see if we can find some money in these Orlando Magic props. I'll have a look at Franz Wagner. So I'd probably look at Franz and Banchero. They're the ones you can kind of predict how they play, what opportunities they get. But Franz, Firstly, his points props at 21.5. He's gone under this in 6 consecutive games. In terms of the matchup, it's a pretty good one. The Jazz allowing the 9th most points to small forwards on the season. So the matchup is good. France hasn't been great lately. He scored 26, 24, 21 in his last 3 games against the Jazz. So I personally not overly fond of his points prop. Assist prop, maybe. He does hit that quite often. The line's at 4.5. He's covered that in 5 out of his last 10. He's got a great matchup. And he had 5 assists the last time he played the Jazz, but he has struggled prior to that. His rebound prop is at 5.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. That is a difficult matchup against the Jazz. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games. So I hate to say it. I'd probably say the best prop for Franz is under in his rebounds, but it doesn't look like you're going to get good odds. Minus 135. And you guys know I like to take bets close to plus money. Banchero. Wonder what's up with Banchero. What's wrong with him? An illness, right? So he was a game time decision last time because of an illness, and he didn't play. Hopefully he's feeling better, but his points prop in this, 21.5. He's got a great matchup. The drop so many points to power forwards. He's hit in 5 of his last 10, scored 30 and 26 points in the 2 games against the Utah Jazz. Last 2 games against the Utah Jazz. They've only played Utah once, and in that game, he did score 30 points. So if Banchero wasn't sick, suffering from an illness, I'd tell you to take the over in this one. But I don't know how he's feeling. I don't know about you guys, but I've been sick and I've still played. But it was a little bit difficult, I must tell you. So, yeah, depending on how ill he is, Banchero at full health, definitely take the over. But right now, I don't know what state he's in. Looking at his assist prop, the line's at 5.5. He did go through a game of like 12 games where he covered this. But he's gone under in 3 consecutive games now. But he does have an excellent matchup. The Jazz give up a lot of assists to power forwards. He has, however, gone under this in 3 consecutive games against the Jazz. Looking at his rebound prop, that is at 6.5. He's covered in 3 out of his last 10. The matchup's not good or bad. And he has rebounded well against Utah Jazz in the last 2 games. 9 rebounds when they matched up earlier this season. So, look, if Banchero wasn't injured, I'd probably be considering his props. But given the state that he's in, I'm not comfortable with that. Franz, he hasn't been playing well. I know Wendell Carter hasn't been playing well at all either. Jalen Suggs, let me have a look here. Line's at 10.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10. In terms of the matchup, it's actually a difficult one. And your head-to-head matchups have been quite inconsistent. So even with Suggs, I'm not overly keen on that either. So being straight up, being 100, I hope I said that right. Nothing from that Utah versus Orlando Magic matchup that I'm really liking. But let's jump into this Milwaukee Bucks versus Charlotte Hornets. Usually, I'm able to pick winners in a game like this. The last time these teams, I think this is the 4th time these teams are playing this season. Apparently, I think the Bucks have blown them out in 3 consecutive games now, 30-plus points. I think they got a total winning margin over 100 points with the 3 games combined so far this season. So blowout city. What I did pick last time, which was a sweat-free bet, I said that Dame Lillard would probably have a big game, and I said that Giannis would go under his PRAs. Both of those delivered, and I said that because the Bucks most likely will blow these guys out. So let's see if we get a similar type of vibe as we go through these. In terms of the players, Giannis is a game-time decision but should play. LaMelo Ball still out for this one. But let's check out Dame Dollar. His points props at 21.5. The matchup is not it's not a hard one, but it's not an easy one either. He did score 23 points the last time these teams played. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10. Looking at head-to-head matchups, he's now covered against the Charlotte Hornets in 3 consecutive games. So all 3 matchups this year, Dame has covered his points prop. Looking at his assist prop, that's at 6.5. The matchup isn't hard, but it's not great either. But he has covered in 4 consecutive games. 7 assists the last time against Charlotte. 7 out of his last 10. He's covered in 2 out of his last 3 games against the Hornets when we're looking at his assists. Rebound-wise, I think he has been rebounding well lately. Let's double-check that. Yep, 9 rebounds in his last game against the Charlotte Hornets, covering 2 of his last 3. And he's gone over his rebound line in 4 consecutive games now. So for Dame, I think points and assists, probably the safest bet. Rebounds, if he maintains this form, I think his PRA he'll cover quite easily. But given the consistency he's shown in his points and assists, I think that might be the better play. So looking at his points plus assists, it's 29.5. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10. Charlotte Hornets, he's covered in all 3. Looking in those games, he's only played 30, 29, and then 25 minutes in that last game. So this blowout was pretty much for the first quarter was a blowout, whereas usually there's a point in a game, second quarter, third quarter, team goes on a run, and then it's a blowout, whereas this was clearly a blowout nice and early. Bucks are on the road in this one. Does that mean the Charlotte Hornets are a little bit more competitive? Bucks probably should still win by a lot. The line in this one's only 11.5. But if Dame's going to get more minutes, I don't mind his points and assists. So I might chuck that up on my little lean list here, and then I'll investigate that a little bit further. Dame, points and assists. Okay. On the topic of the Bucks, let's go into Giannis, and I wonder if he's got similar lines in his PRA and whether I'm man enough to take the under. So his points prop is at 27.5. He scored 24 points the last time these guys played. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10, but he's gone under in all 3 games this year against the Hornets, 16, 15, and 24. Looking at his assists, the line's at 6.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10, only 1 assist against the Hornets last time, and he's gone under in his assists. And looking at his rebound prop, it's at 11.5. It's plus money. He's covered this in 2 of his last 5, only 1 of 3 games against the Hornets. So the line has moved down slightly from the last time that I took it, but it was pretty sweat-free last time. If we're looking at his PRA, it's down to 45.5. I believe it was 48.5 the last time we played it. He only finished on 33 anyway, so it was a pretty sweat-free bet. In head-to-head matchups, check it out, Giannis this year. 3 games against the Hornets, 33, 32, and 33 PRA. I want to play the under again on the PRA side of things, but I just feel like how many times can I play the same bet against the same team before someone makes an adjustment? In this game, the Hornets could make an adjustment, keep the game close. Giannis plays these full set of minutes and ends up with 50-something PRA. So that's what I'm a little bit worried about. So I'm going to leave it here as a lean. I'm not going to investigate it further, but I do think there's a good chance it happens. I just know I'm going to be filthy with myself if he goes over this PRA, and I bet the under. So I'm obviously leaning towards the under for sure, but I'll kick myself in the face if he goes over because I know in my mind there's a chance that it could happen. Brook Lopez, let's have a look at Brook. Points props at 11.5, covered in 5 of his last 10. The matchup against the Hornets is a great one, but Brook scored 0 points the last time these guys played and 11 points prior to that. So I'm not loving Brook in this one. Look, he could really turn it on, but he's obviously not their first option. If your first and second option get it going and then you blow a team out, chances are you don't need to do nothing. So Brook Lopez, I'm not overly keen on. Bobby Portis is an interesting one because it is a blowout. Bobby probably gets more minutes and then scores a lot more points, right? So you can see that he's had a lot of success against the Charlotte Hornets. But in his last 10, he's covered in 6 times. Against the Hornets, he's covered in 4 out of his last 5. The last 2 games, 18 and 21 points against Charlotte. In those games, only playing 20 to 21 minutes. So Bobby scoring very easily, taking a lot of shots, 16 and 14 shots in 20 minutes. Man's getting busy. So Bobby Portis, I don't mind that, to be honest. I've seen him go off for a lot of good games, and I always think, I didn't look into Bobby Portis. But I'm going to put him on the short list. Bobby Portis points. Looking at his rebound prop, he's got a good matchup for this as well. He's covered in 4 of his last 10. The line's 7.5. Head-to-head matchups, I'd say the line's perfect, right? He's hitting 7 or 8. One game he hit 12. So Bobby Portis rebounds, I'm probably on the fence about, but his points, it's something worth investigating there. Jumping over into the Charlotte Hornets, I want to start with Nick Richards. So I took his points prop the last game at 10.5, I believe. He only finished in 6. They were getting blown out. He only played 20 minutes. As you can see, that last game against the Bucks, his lowest minutes played in his last 10. Why did I take him? His recent form was excellent. The matchup against the Bucks is a great one. And he scored 16 points the last time they played. And I thought there's pretty strong likelihood that there's a blowout here. But then I was like, he versed them. They still got blown out by 36 points, and he scored 16. They got blown out again, but this time he only scored 6. He played 9 less minutes. He shot 3 for 7. And now if you're only like shooting layups and dunking the ball, it's pretty difficult to shoot 3 from 7. So I don't know if I'm willing to take him at 9.5 again at these odds. If we got 9.5 and it was plus money, I'd be eating Nick Richards up. But I'm not feeling him for this one. Cody Martin. So the only prop that I'm going to look at for Cody Martin is rebounds, because I bet his rebounds, I think 3 games in a row now, and I'm getting it at plus money. If it's 4.5 at plus money, I think I might have to take it again. But yeah, there we go. So it's 4.5, but it's minus 119. So that's no good. So he does have a good matchup. He's covered this in 8 out of his last 10 games. And against the Bucks, he's had 5 and 6 rebounds in his last 2 games. So the line's at 4.5. And I honestly would lean to the over, but at these odds, I'm not interested. I don't play that type of shit. And I wouldn't take this bet at 5.5. So the odds aren't too kind for me. So I'm going to be choosing not to play Cody Martin. But let's have a look at Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller. So for these guys, I usually lean to the under. These types of guys go under a lot more than they go over. They are capable of some massive games, but they're not going to produce close to the line on a consistent basis. Bridges has hit in 5 out of his last 10. The matchup against the Bucks is a tough one. And against the Bucks this season, in 3 games, Bridges has gone under in all 3. So, yeah, obviously leaning to the under again. But he got 17 points against the Bucks in a blowout loss. Still played 36 minutes in that game, which is pretty crazy. He's played 30-plus minutes in all the 3 games, despite losing by 30 to 40 points. So he's going to get the opportunities. He just hasn't shot the ball very well. So it makes me a bit hesitant to bet the under. Looking at his assists, that he's dropped off a cliff in the last 3. And against the Bucks, he hasn't gone too well. Rebound-wise, the line's at 6.5. Only got 3 rebounds against the Bucks. Prior to that, was rebounding extremely well. And he's gone under in his rebound prop in 3 consecutive games. So definitely leaning to the under on his PRA. I think that's a pretty good bet. But yeah, unders I generally avoid unless I'm super aroused by them. And that one isn't giving me tingles. So Brandon Miller, his points prop is at 17.5. He's hit this in 4 out of his last 10 games. In terms of the matchup with the Bucks, it's somewhat on the difficult side, but it's not hard. But Brandon Miller's gone under in 4 consecutive games now. And against the Bucks, he's gone under in 3 straight games as well. Very similar to Miles Bridges. He's also playing on average 30 minutes a night against the Bucks. This is a home game, though. So thanks to Outlier, they're letting us know that Brandon Miller has covered this line in 7 of his last 8 home games. So obviously he's had this shit stretch here. These 4 games where he struggled, all games on the road. If we switch this to home games only, we see Brandon Miller has covered in 7 out of his last 8. So it's much more impressive. So I'm not interested in taking the under in Brandon Miller. Miles Bridges, I'm not interested in that either, to be honest. So let's have a quick look at Trey Mann. I think the lines, I think I called it the last time these guys played. The lines are getting pretty sharp on Trey Mann. I haven't really touched him, but he scored 16 points the last time they played. That was the only time he's played the Bucks. He had 16 points, 3 assists, and then looking at his rebounds, he had 4 rebounds. So what I might consider for Trey Mann, because his lines have actually dropped. His rebounds line was sitting at 4.5 to 5.5 not too long ago. And his assist line, that got up to 6.5 at one point. So for him to get a 3.5 assist line based off a few tough performances, I think there could be some value here. But so his points prop is at 16. He still played 32 minutes. So whether they get blown out or not, my man's going to play a lot of minutes. Field goals attempted. He attempted 12 shots in that game. But I think what the key point here is if Trey Mann starts off the game shooting poorly, then he's probably not going to take too many shots. If he makes a couple early, he'll probably be a bit more aggressive with it. But Trey Mann points, I'm a little bit hesitant. Rebounds and assists is something that I've been playing on him. And his line for this is only 7.5. So he's had 3 quiet games. But his first 4 games for the Charlotte Hornets were absolute bangers. For him at 7.5, I think there's value in that one. But I obviously don't like the odds. Minus 125, it ain't my thing. But I think there are a lot of those apps in the US where it's pretty much over or under. Like, I don't really give you odds. I don't know if that's true or not. So you might have to explain that to me. But if that is the case, these type of juiced odds, probably good plays to pick in a setting like that. So in this particular game, the 2 games bets that I like, Dame points and assists, and the under in Giannis PRAs. I'll probably play the Dame one, and the Giannis one I'll probably leave as a lean. But let's jump into the next one. It's the Golden State Warriors versus the New York Knicks. Now, we've got limited markets on this one. Updated news, Andrew Wiggins is out for the Warriors. Jalen Brunson is a game-time decision in this one. And given that he's such an integral part of this game, there's no other markets available. So let's have a look at Jalen Brunson, though, just in case he does play. His points line would be at 31.5, which is covered in 6 of his last 10 games. He's got a great matchup against the Warriors, who give up a lot of points to point guards. In his last head-to-head game, he had 21 points against the Warriors. Prior to that, 13. But keep in mind, these were in 2022. He's clearly taken a leap this year. Julius Randle's not available. So I think you can throw that historic form out the window. If he was healthy, I would take the over, of course. But what's he suffering from? Neck spasm. My Lord. All right. So if you're suffering from neck spasms, you probably lean to the under, right? That seems uncomfortable to me. But I'm not sure how bad they are. But God. So I'm not going to be betting on Jalen Brunson. Looking at his numbers, the line's at 7.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10. The matchup is a good one for overs, but again, neck spasms, right? We're seeing full lines here. The lines haven't been adjusted because he's injured. The lines are still quite decent. So if he does play, I'll probably lean to the under, but the matchup is great. So let's have a look at these Warriors, though. Starting with the chef. Steph's points line's at 26.5. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games. I think the last game against Washington, I remember calling it out that he's got a great matchup, but he most likely goes under. I said that because I don't think he's going to need to score 30 points in order for them to win. Against the New York Knicks, he might need to, right? The Knicks are a great defensive team, but if they're missing Jalen Brunson, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to score points. The Warriors might be able to get an easy win here. The spread in this game is 4 points. So at the moment, they're predicting to be close, but we also don't know if Jalen Brunson's going to be out or not. In head-to-head matchup, Steph Curry scored 24 points the last time against the Knicks. Again, 2022. But the matchup is a difficult one. Looking at his assist prop, that's at 4.5. The matchup's not too bad. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10. Had 10 assists the last time against the Knicks. Rebound-wise, 3.5. Difficult matchup. Did have 6 rebounds against them. But again, 2022 was the last time they played. Star players like Steph Curry, they usually have inflated lines. If I'm repeating myself video to video, just let me know and I'll slow it down. But I know a lot of you guys are watching this channel for the first time. Now, a lot of star players have inflated line. The reason being is they know that the public are going to want to bet an over on players like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, whatever it may be. So their line, I promise you, where they think Steph Curry finishes is not 34.5. I believe it would be a lot lower than that. But 34.5 is definitely achievable, but I don't think that's where they think he hits. He's gone well under this in the last 3. If Jalen Brunson is out, I don't know. I'd probably take the under because Steph Curry is a difficult matchup. But the Warriors should get the win quite easily. So, yeah, I don't bet Steph Curry too many times because of that reason. But, yeah, I definitely lean to the under in the PRA for Steph. Podziemski, props 10.5. He's only hit this 3 out of his last 10. Ain't nobody interested in his points prop, I'll tell you that. We want to see his rebounds and assists. So this is where this man gets after it. His rebound prop is at 6.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. He's got a difficult matchup, though. The Knicks allow the fewest rebounds to shooting guards on the season. His assist prop, that is at 4.5. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. The matchup isn't as difficult, but he hasn't hit this at a very consistent basis. So I'm not feeling that one. Jonathan Kuminga. Could this be a matchup that he takes advantage of? So his points props at 16.5. He started to come back to life. He's scored quite well in his last 2 games. He's covered this line in 5 out of his last 10 games. The matchup isn't a bad one, actually. It's pretty good. But he has struggled against the Knicks in the past, but this was over a season ago. So Jonathan Kuminga, I'd probably lean the over in his points. But maybe there's some value in his assist. If his assist line's still at 2.5, might be something that you eat up. But we'll get to that in a minute. His rebound line is 5.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. He's got a difficult matchup. So his rebounds don't interest me. We're about to click his assist prop. Let's see if we can get 2.5 here. Yes, it is. Jonathan Kuminga, 2.5. The matchup's not good nor bad, but he has covered this in 6 consecutive games. Jonathan Kuminga. And if you're getting over 2.5 at -105, I think he's making my list. Kuminga, over 2.5 assists. I do like that. I was very close to taking it against Washington. On this particular day, I had a lot of bets down, though, so I was trying to limit my outlay. But so far, I don't mind it. He's only had 2 games where he's gone under in his last 10. Covered in 5 straight. His last 20, he's hit 12 times. If you're getting those odds, very close to plus money. The matchup isn't awful. I'll obviously investigate a little bit further, but Jonathan Kuminga assists, definitely something I'm thinking about. Let's check out Draymond Green real quick. The matchup's difficult for him. Points prop, ain't nobody mucking around with that. Assist prop at 5.5. I don't like that one either. That sucks. 3 out of his last 10. And his rebound prop is at 6.5. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10. So he has been rebounding quite well, but he does have a difficult matchup in terms of rebounds. So, yeah, look, limited markets in this game. One things I'm going to consider when the lineups are made is DiVincenzo point or 3-pointers. That's been hitting for me quite well. Josh Hart rebounds, Precious Achua rebounds. Those guys have been doing a lot of work off the ball, so I don't mind that either. Let's jump into the next one. Right, so we're jumping into the Atlanta Hawks versus the Brooklyn Nets. So for Brooklyn, Cam Thomas is out. For Atlanta, Okongwu and Trae Young, they are both still out of the lineup. So let's jump into this and see what juice we can find. We'll start with Atlanta. DeJounte Murray starting at point guard these days. Points props at 21.5. Outliers calling this a plus EV play. He has covered this in 5 out of his last 10 games. The Brooklyn Nets struggle to defend point guards. I believe that has changed, though, with Ben Simmons in the lineup. But on the season, they have struggled to defend point guards. In his last head-to-head game against the Nets, he scored 13 points. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games against them. So that makes me a little bit reluctant to take his points prop. But let's check his assist prop out. Difficult matchup. The Nets allow the 6th fewest assists to point guards. He's had 11 assists in 2 consecutive games now. And against the Brooklyn Nets, he had 9 assists the last time they played, but he had gone under in 4 consecutive games prior to that. I did this last time, but knowing that, Trae's an integral part of their team, no Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, big uplift in opportunities. Checking out his last 10 games without Trae Young, he's covered this 8.5 assist line in 7 out of his last 10 games. So given the great form that he's been in without Trae, I'd probably lean to the over here, and especially if we're getting odds at plus 105, definitely something that I want to research a little bit further. So let's have a look at Murray assists a little bit later. His rebound prop, though, that's at 5.5. The matchup's not good or bad. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. If you're looking at parlays, he's had 4+ rebounds in 10 consecutive games. In head-to-head matchups, he had 10 rebounds the last time against the Nets, and then 6 rebounds prior to that. So both of these 2 games were this season. So he has rebounded well against the Nets in the past. So 4 rebounds, definitely one that I'll be taking for one of my many parlays, I'm sure. Who else do we have? We've got Bogdanovic. I'll have a quick look at this one because I haven't been overly impressed with how he's been playing lately. But points lines at 17.5. He scored 19 in his last game against Utah. But prior to that, not doing too well. I've checked the numbers without Trae Young, and he doesn't see a massive increase. Covered in 5 out of his last 10. He's probably more consistent, but not a massive increase, right? But you might want to take 15 points for them parlays, right? For those little safe ones, 15 points for Bogdanovic might be on the table. He only scored 14 points the last time against the Nets, but that was in 2022. Play that I'm keen to look at is Jalen Johnson. This guy's been eating it up. I was hesitant to take him last time, but he played very well. So let's have a look at Jalen Johnson. He has a difficult matchup, though. The Nets allow the fewest points to power forwards on the season. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10 games, and he has struggled against the Nets. He's gone under in 5 consecutive games. I'd say the only one that really matters to me is this one, played in November. Last year, he obviously had a much smaller role on this team. This year, playing a lot more minutes with a lot more opportunity. So, particular game against Brooklyn, he played 40 minutes in that game. He only shot the ball 7 times, though. If we look at his last 5 games, he's averaging 14.6 shot attempts per game. So he's definitely grown a lot since then, playing 37 minutes, shooting the ball a ton. But once again, difficult matchup for power forwards. Looking at his assist prop, though, it's at 4.5. It's at plus money. Difficult matchup, but he has covered in 5 out of his last 10. That game earlier this year against Brooklyn, he finished on 3 assists in 40 minutes. What would be interesting to see is what his assists look like without Trae Young on the court, and check that out. Last 3 games, he's absolutely murdered his assist prop. 6, 7, and 6. We need 5 to get plus 130 odds. I don't mind that. He has struggled prior to that, though. Is this a more recent thing? I think that really requires some investigation. And what I mean by that is you want to look at his potential assists in different time frames without Trae Young, different games, and really dive in to see, is there a change in the way that he's playing which is driving these results, or does he pass the ball 8 or 9 times per game and these guys are just making their shots? So that's something that you really need to look into to understand. Looking at his rebound prop, the line's at 9.5. He's been rebounding like a beast lately, 4 consecutive games. He's hitting 7 of his last 10. The matchup is difficult. Last time he played the Nets, he only had 6 rebounds in 40 minutes. So I think out of all these players, probably the assists has the biggest upside. The rebounds he'll probably get very close to. But assists for Jalen Johnson has me intrigued. So I'll dive into that a little bit further after the video. Check the pinned comment to see what I land on if you choose to tell. Clint Capella, lines at 10.5. He's covered in 6 of his last 10. He's got a difficult matchup against Brooklyn. He's covered 2 of his last 5 games against the Nets. So I don't like taking centers to score points against the Nets. But what about rebounds? Lines at 9.5. He's covered in 7 of his last 10. The matchup's a little bit better. So that looks pretty good. In head-to-head matchups, Clint Capella's rebounding like a beast. 4 of his last 5, 2 games this season, 15 and 12 rebounds. In those games, he played 27 and 28 minutes. Looking at his recent form, in his last 5 games, we can see he's not playing the same volume of minutes, 21.4 minutes per game. Now, I don't know if that's a rebound, if that's a minutes restriction. 24 rebounds against Utah is not too bad. That was a blowout, so fair enough. That was somewhat a blowout as well, 17 minutes. This was a close game against the Raptors, and he only played 20 minutes. So, yeah, a little bit of cause for concern. But if Clint Capella is playing over 25 minutes in this game, I think he covers this line quite well. I know that they've been playing Bruno Fernando a little bit more, and he's actually been playing okay. So, but a rebound prop for Clint Capella, I think we're going to see more people talking about it. Odds are only at minus 119, though, and unless I'm feeling 1,000% confident, I probably won't play that. So that's not making my shortlist. If we head over to the Brooklyn Nets players, what are we going to learn? I say this every time I look at this guy. I don't bet on Mikal Bridges, Michael Bridges, Mr. Bridges, and this is why. His form is all over the place. 3 out of the last 10 has been struggling lately. So you can't really predict how he's going to play. In terms of the matchup, it's not a bad matchup against the Atlanta Hawks. They give up a lot of points in head-to-head matchups. Woo! This guy has killed them. 24, 42, 45, and 32 points against the Atlanta Hawks. So there's got to be something about the way that Atlanta plays defense that enables Bridges to go off. So if you're a big believer in players against certain teams, you'll definitely be taking Bridges overs in points. Minus 106, it's pretty good odds. What I want to do over the last 5 is I want to check his minutes and shot attempts. He's playing 31.5 minutes a game, which is decent. Field goal attempts, they're there. They're a bit inconsistent, but they're there nonetheless. His shot percentage is terrible. He's shooting 19% from downtown, 33% from the field, 42% from the free throw line. So he's playing as if one of his fingers off, pretty much. So that's not good. We also know that Cam Thomas is out, right? And he takes a lot of shots. But having a look at Cam Thomas, games without Cam Thomas, we can see that Bridges still is inconsistent as hell. 3 out of his last 10 games he's gone over. So, look, if he wasn't shooting so bad over these last 5 games, if he was just inconsistent, I would take the over against the Hawks here. But he's shooting so bad over his last 5 games. It's not even inconsistent. He's consistently bad. So that does make it a little bit difficult. But no Cam Thomas. Does that mean he probably gets more assists? He's hit this in 2 of his last 5, but wildly inconsistent, right? So I'm not loving that. Let's have a quick look at his rebound prop. Maybe there's some consistency there. 5 out of his last 10 is minus 140, and the matchup isn't great either. So I'm going to have to pass on that. But We don't have a Dennis Schroeder prop available at the moment, but I guess it's because Ben Simmons is a game time decision. Ben Simmons probably have a good go at getting assists, or even Schroeder potentially, but they're not available right now. Nick Claxton, his line's at 11.5. The matchup is somewhat difficult. He's hit in 3 out of his last 10. He has covered in 3 of his last 5 against the Nets. Rebound prop, 3 out of his last 10, and he's covered in every single game against not the Nets, the Hawks. He's covered in 5 consecutive games against the Hawks, though. So that could be, looking at his points prop against the Hawks. Let me check this out. 4, 22, 14, 10. You could get maybe a double-double for Nick Claxton. Could be a good play, but yeah. It's just, look, Nick Claxton and Bridges play very well against the Hawks by the looks of it, but they're both inconsistent as hell. But chances are they probably do it again. I'm just not willing to put my money on it. So reflecting back on this game, I would say DeJounte Murray and Jalen Johnson assists is probably what intrigues me the most. But I'll have to do some research to find out which one I like better before I place some money on it. The next game we're looking at is the OKC Thunder versus the San Antonio Spurs. No game time decisions in this one, which is good. OKC are 10.5 point favorites. Potential chance for a blowout, so let's keep that in mind as we go through these players. But we'll look at the San Antonio Spurs first. Let's have a look at Trey Jones, and we're only going to look at his assist prop because it doesn't do too much of the other stuff on a consistent basis. His assist prop is at 6.5. He's hitting 4 out of his last 10, and the matchup's not good nor bad. His brother against OKC had like 14 or 15 assists, though. So that could be interesting. If this guy delivers 12, 14, 15 assists, I'll kick myself in the face for not taking it. But Devin Vassell, let's check him out. He's been playing pretty decent at times. 5 out of his last 10, he's covered this line. The matchup against the OKC Thunder is a great one. They allow the 3rd most points to shooting guards on the season. In head-to-head matchups, though, he's gone under in 4 straight, so I don't like that. Assist-wise, he's got a good matchup as well. 5 out of his last 10, but 5 out of his last 6, really. Head-to-head matchups, he did have 7 assists the last time they played OKC, but that was the only time he's covered in 5 games. So Devin Vassell has a great matchup, but hasn't delivered against him in the past, so that leaves me to be a little bit hesitant. And Victor Wembanyama, let's check out Wemby. We're going to have to check every single prop he's got because this guy's a machine. His points prop is 21.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. He's got the matchup against Chet. So these guys are going to be battling it out for the next 10 years at minimum. He scored 24 points the last time he played, and they lost by 36 points. So still a pretty 26 points, sorry. A decent outing for Wemby there. His assist props at 3.5. He's got a good matchup against OKC. Wemby's covered this in 5 out of his last 6 games. And against OKC last time, he finished with 4. So he covered this line despite the blowout. So I do like Wemby overs in assists, but at -119, I'll probably avoid it. His rebound prop is at 10.5. He's got a good matchup. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10. And he's rebounded extremely well against OKC. So 14 and 12 rebounds against OKC. Again, this is -119. Not overly aroused by those odds. But if we look at his rebounds plus assists, is there a chance we get better odds for it? And we do. Here we go. 14.5. Okay. Wemby, 14.5. Rebounds plus assists. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. Against OKC, he's had 16 rebounds plus assists in his last 2 games against them. So that's pretty favorable. He's got a good matchup. He's done it against OKC in the past, and he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5. Let's have a look at the games where he didn't hit it. Utah, somewhat difficult matchup for centers. The OKC matchup is much easier for rebounds and assists. And Dallas, surprisingly, Dallas does a great job against centers with Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford in there. Dallas tends to get destroyed by power forwards, but in terms of centers, they actually do a good job of slowing them down. So Wemby against Chet, I like this. All right. Let me just take notes of this because if I get too excited, I'm going to forget. Wemby over rebounds and assists plus money. $. Let's go. Okay. Let's jump into the OKC Thunder props. I want to check Chet first whilst we're talking about big men. The big men absolutely feast on the Spurs. Now, Chet's been playing great. He's covered this line in 4 consecutive games, 6 out of his last 10. His line's at 16.5. Scored 17 points the last game against the Spurs. That first game, both Chet and Wemby were slow. But I don't mind this. The matchup's good. Recent form is pretty good. And his minutes seem to be back up again. So that looks pretty good. His assist props at 2.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. The Spurs don't give up many assists to centers because those centers are too busy scoring. And last time they played, he did cover his assist prop the last time they played. So rebound prop is at 8.5. He's actually been covering this quite well. 4 out of his last 5, 5 out of his last 10. The matchup is a good one. He had 9 rebounds the last time he versed the San Antonio Spurs. So I do realize I didn't look at the block steals for Wemby, so I'll go back and check that out. But Chet had 3 blocks the last time they versed the Spurs. Over his last 10, he's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, 5 out of his last 6, plus 130 odds. The Spurs don't get blocked too much, though. His steal prop, 0.5, 7 out of his last 10. He did get a steal in both games against the Spurs, though, but minus 169. I'm not overly aroused by that. But Chet points, rebounds, and assists, they're all quite intriguing, I must say. Let me go back to Wemby so we look at his steals and his blocks. His blocks line is at 3.5. You can get that for plus money. He's been on a tear lately. He's covered this in 4 consecutive games, 5 out of his last 6 games. One of those games he had 10 blocks. The Thunder don't allow too many blocks, and he's only covered this in 1 of his 2 against OKC. So 4 blocks the last time they played. So I'd be a little bit hesitant despite the good odds. Hasn't got many steals against OKC. Has had some games with some good steals. But the Oklahoma City Thunder actually take care of the ball quite well. They don't have too many turnovers. So Wemby blocks and steals, I'm not feeling you, but I do like Wemby rebounds and assists. I'm pretty sure that's clear by now. Let's have a look at SGA. His points prop is at 31.5, like it usually is. Great matchup against the Spurs. He's covered this in only 3 of his last 10 points. I don't think I've ever seen anyone in NBA history finish between 30 and 32 points more often than SGA. 30, 31, 32. He loves it. In head-to-head matchup, scored 32 the last time against the Spurs, 28 points the last 2 games prior to that. So what I've been playing when it's SGA time, I usually just take him for 25 with the Thunder money line and then add a few extras in. So depending what the odds are, might have a same game parlay in this one. But that's his points prop. Assist-wise, line's at 6.5. He's covered in 7 of his last 10. Great matchup against the Spurs. And in head-to-head matchups, he had 10 assists the last time they played. That's pretty crazy. So minus 119 though, so I don't like that, but I'm definitely leaning to the over for SGA in his assists. Quick look at his boards. Line's at 5.5. He's covered in 4 of his last 10. He covered in all 3 games against the Spurs, but his recent form's a bit, how you going? And I do want to check his steals prop because this man gets a lot of steals on a consistent basis, and we know that the Spurs can be prone to turning over the ball. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10, but against the Spurs, he's covered it in 3 consecutive games. One of those games he had 7 steals in, but he did have 2 steals the last time they played. Minus 104, that could be a little bit sweaty, so I don't want to play that. Not with too much confidence anyway. Let's check out Jalen Williams. Over his last 10, he's covered this line 7 times. The matchup's not good or bad. And against the Spurs, he's actually got under in the last 2. So that's interesting. Looking at his assist prop, the line's at 4.5. The matchup's okay. He's covered in 7 of his last 8 games. Against the Spurs, he had 7 assists last time, but for the most part, 2 out of 5 he's gone over. And looking at his rebound prop, that's also at 4.5. The matchup's not a great one, but he has rebounded well against the Spurs in the past. But yeah, nothing from Jalen Williams screaming out to me for this one. Let's check out Josh Giddey. This guy, if he's on, he'll hit his prop in the first quarter. If he's off, he's got no chance. So his line's up to 9.5. The matchup, a pretty good one, right? Everyone should have a good matchup against the Spurs. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, has covered this in 4 of his last 5 games against the Spurs. The last 2 are the main ones I'd be interested in because Josh Giddey's playing less minutes. So in 24 and 22 minutes, Josh Giddey has covered this line quite well. In those games, he's attempted 11 and 13 shots. If we have a look at his last 5 games, he's covered this in 4 of his last 5. He's playing 22 minutes on average, but he's only attempting 8 shot attempts. So I think the line's just about right. Josh Giddey should get the over. Minus 115, I'm a bit hesitant. But yeah, his shot attempts are definitely down compared to his usual rate against the Spurs. Assist prop, the line's at 3.5, which is covered in 6 of his last 10. The matchup is excellent. And against the Spurs, he's covered this in every single game. 5 out of 5. Minus 119 though. And looking at his rebound prop, that's at 5.5. Good matchup, covered in every game against the Spurs. And in his last 3, he's covered, but he's covered in 5 out of his last 10. So for all of Josh Giddey's props, he's pretty much covered it against the Spurs every single time. His recent form's a bit sketchy. So you might just look at a PRA perhaps, because he's got a good matchup for everything, right? You need 19.5 PRAs for Josh Giddey. He's only covered this in 4 out of his last 10. But against the Spurs, look what he's done. He's covered this line with ease in every single game. So, yeah, difficult one. I think anyone from OKC could go off in this game. I'm just trying to think of the script in my mind. Obviously, Wemby's going to do everything for the Spurs. For OKC, you know SGA scoring at least 25. We know Chet's going to be up for this game. Jalen Williams capable of a lot. I just, find it hard. Like, he's an Aussie. I was born and raised in Australia, so technically I'm an Aussie. I clearly don't look like Josh Giddey, but do you have to back your countrymen? I'm not too sure. So I'm not even going to put that on my list because I'm a bit hesitant to do it. But Josh Giddey, PR20, I reckon he goes over. And I'll kick myself in the face for not taking it. But yeah, looking back at this game, really the Wemby rebounds and assists is probably what intrigues me the most. The line's not as high as you would think it would be, despite the blowouts that they've had in the past. So definitely liking Wemby to get some minutes and to cause some havoc. Let's jump into the next one. It's the Houston Rockets versus the Phoenix Suns. Now, Bradley Beal's a game-time decision. Yusuf Nurkic is a game-time decision too. So checking to see what props are available. For Phoenix, it's only Booker, Durant, and Nurkic with lines available. So we might as well start there. So Devin Booker, his points props at 27.5. Matchup's difficult. He's hit this in 3 of his last 10. Against the Rockets, he's gone under in this season. He's gone under his points line against the Rockets. His assist prop at 5.5. 6 out of his last 10. Difficult matchup as well. And in head-to-head games, only 2 assists the last time they played the Rockets, 7 assists prior to that. I haven't bet on Devin Booker since probably November. Just way too inconsistent for me. I'm not feeling any of his props. Rebounds are 4.5. Again, 3 out of his last 10. Difficult matchup and inconsistent against the Rockets. So, if you guys are putting any bets on any of these players that I'm calling out that I rarely ever bet on, let me know in the comment section and give me a reason why. Write your reasons why. Educate me, because it's probably something I can learn about it, because there's a lot of players I just refuse to bet on because of shit like that. Let's have a look at Kevin Durant. Points props at 26.5. He's got a good matchup in this one. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, he's done quite well. 27 and 28 points in the 2 games against the Houston Rockets this year, so I don't mind that. Minus 111, I'm willing to probably probe into that. So let me just take a quick note. KD points. This is a home game for Phoenix too. So yeah, Kevin Durant could get busy, but again, Bradley Beal could be playing. Looking at KD's assist prop, that's at 5.5. Again, he's got a good matchup here. He's hit this quite well, I can see. 6 out of his last 10. And in head-to-head matchups, he's covered it both times against the Rockets. 16 and then 8 assists. Now I've got to put his assists on my bloody list. More to look through. So that's pretty crazy. Now, if this guy's gone over in his rebound prop against this team as well, we could be on here. His line's at 6.5. He's covered in 6 of his last 10. He's got an excellent matchup. God, he's gone over both, I bet you. 10 and 11 rebounds for Kevin Durant against the Houston Rockets. I think if you want to put a small, based on these numbers, right, you might even put a small play on Kevin Durant for 10 assists and 10 rebounds, triple-double odds. It could be quite fruitful. Actually, I'm going to check that right now. All right, so I've just checked the numbers. On Bet365, you can get Kevin Durant to get a triple-double. That's $29 odds, which is, what's that, plus 2,800, 2,890 or something like that. I don't know how to convert to US odds very well, but 29 to 1 basically for Kevin Durant to get a triple-double. I just feel like you'd be foolish not to take that, right? So, yeah, it's definitely, like, I'm obviously not going to put a lot of money on it, but you just want to have your skin in the game. I might even just put $10. $10 on Kevin Durant to get a triple-double, why not? For the clout, so I can say that I did it. But look, I'm loving the rebounds prop here for KD. Got a great matchup. Loving the assist prop for KD. He's got a great matchup. So, and points-wise, I like that too. So what you may even look at is just his PRA. He's covered his PRA in 6 of his last 10. Lines at 38.5. Has an excellent matchup for every stat category. And against the Rockets, he's killed them 53 and 47 the last 2 games. I wonder if in those games Bradley Beal was playing. So Bradley Beal did not play in both of those games against the Houston Rockets. So this is why I say I'm going to take note of a short list and then research them a little bit further, because Bradley Beal didn't play those games. But we've got games with Bradley Beal. Kevin Durant has covered this PRA in 4 consecutive games with Bradley Beal, 6 out of his last 10. So I still don't hate it, like Kevin Durant, to cover that PRA. Play it up to 39.5 perhaps. Probably not. Actually, this PRA is pretty tight. But yeah, look, I'll investigate KD a little bit further after the video, and you can check my pin comment to see what else I bet on. I've already put $10 on KD to get a triple-double just for a little bit of fun, but I'll have a look and do more serious props for KD after this. Yusuf Nurkic, his points props at 11.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. The matchup's somewhat difficult. He scored 8 points the last time he played the Rockets. Assists, 3.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10. Difficult matchup as well. Had no assists against the Rockets last time. And rebounds, 10.5. 4 of his last 10. And he had 10 boards against them last time. So nothing for Nurkic that I'm really liking. Jumping into the Rockets, Fred VanVleet's points lines at 15.5. He's covered this in 3 out of his last 10. So that's not good. He's got a good matchup scoring, though. And the last time he played the Phoenix Suns, he scored 23 points. Prior to that, he had 10. Assists, lines at 6.5. 2 of his last 10. He's gone under in both games against the Suns. The matchup's not a difficult one, but Fred has not delivered. And rebound-wise, lines at 3.5. 3 of his last 10. Matchup's not bad. 1 of his last 2 against Phoenix. So not really loving Fred VanVleet's play as of late by the looks of this. We might even just look at an under for his PRA. What do we got here? The line's at 25.5. He's covered in 2 of his last 10 and 8 of his last 20. So last 20, he's really stepped it up. But in his last 10, he has not been good. And he's been playing decent minutes. Hasn't been shooting the ball well, though. So he's been shocking shooting the ball. But I'm not overly excited about that pick. Jalen Green, this guy's been inconsistent as hell, so this will be a quick one. Line's at 15.5. He's covered in 4 of his last 10 in head-to-head matchups against Phoenix. Because they're okay. 3 out of his last 5. I think the only ones I'd be interested in is probably Jabari Smith and Alfred Sengun. So Jabari Smith has been playing well lately. He's been scoring quite well, but he's been rebounding well too. He's got a decent matchup. He's covered in 3 straight, 5 of his last 10. Against the Suns, he scored 22 points the last time they matched up, but 9 points in the game earlier this season. Rebound props, he's been doing this quite well. Let's check this out. The line's at 9.5. Matchup's a little bit difficult, but check that out. 16, 17, and 13 rebounds in his last 3. So 6 out of his last 10. And he had 16 rebounds the last time he played the Phoenix Suns. So I don't mind it at all, to be honest. Points and rebounds probably could be a good play for Jabari Smith Jr., 24.5, because he's murdered that as of late. With his points and his rebounds, he's been shooting well over. But if we do see some regression, right, and he does only score 15 points, if he has a strong rebounding game, you'll cover this, and vice versa, right? If he only scores 12 points, but he pulls down 14 boards, then Jabari Smith, bringing home the bacon. His minutes are definitely up, so he's got the easier matchup with points, but rebounds, he's got it done against them in the past. 22 and 16. Do you want to ride the hot hand? I'm not too sure, but Jabari Smith, I'll look into you a little bit more. All right, the last player to look at in this game is Alperen Sengun. Points prop is at 20.5. He's covered this in 2 out of his last 10. Matchup is difficult, and he's covered in 1 of 5 against the Suns. Assist-wise, it's 4.5. He's gone under in every game against the Suns, and he's covered in 5 of his last 10. And the rebound-wise, line's at 10.5. He's hit this in 3 straight, 4 of his last 10, and 2 of his last 5 against Phoenix. Matchup's difficult, so yeah, not feeling Sengun in this one. So obviously KD, all of his props I do like. Jabari Smith Jr., points and rebounds. That's what I'm going to look into a little bit further. Next one I'm going to look into is the Miami Heat versus Denver Nuggets. Now, there's limited markets available in this one. Tyler Hero is a game time decision. He's actually the only one. It's just Tyler Hero from what I understand, but we're not seeing many props available. Why aren't there props for Denver is what I'd be questioning. Let me see if Outlier has any insights. The Hero, Kevin Love is out. Orlando Robinson's game time decision. So, yeah, so Tyler Hero must be a big difference maker when it comes to the sports books. But look, I've got Nikola Jokic up, so let's just talk about him. His points prop is 25.5. He's covered in 5 of his last 10. He's got a difficult matchup against the Miami Heat. In head-to-head matchups, he's played well. 5 out of his last 7, he's covered this line, so that's not too bad. Looking at his assist prop, he's covered it. It's 9.5. He's covered this in 4 consecutive games. Matchup difficult, but he's covered this in 3 of his last 7. And his rebound prop is at 12.5. It's plus money. 2 out of 7 games against Miami. And he's been rebounding like an absolute beast over his last 4 games. I'm personally not a big fan of Nikola Jokic props in this game. But when the right matchup comes around, definitely something I'd consider. Now let's have a look at Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy's been playing great. His line is at 19.5. He's covered this in 8 of his last 10 games. This is pretty wild. It does have a difficult matchup, though. Denver allow the fewest points to small forwards. Jimmy has covered this line in 4 consecutive games against the Denver Nuggets. So Jimmy says, fuck your matchup. I'm getting buckets anyway. So I don't mind Jimmy's points. I don't bet on Jimmy Butler that often, but he's been killing it. Assist-wise, he's covered in 6 of his last 7 against Denver, despite the difficult matchup. In his last 4, he's been an absolute freak. He's covered in 4 consecutive games. So Jimmy assists are not bad. And if we check his rebounds, he's covered 7 out of his last 10. He's covered in 4 of 7 against Denver. So difficult matchup all around. But yeah, Jimmy's really got it done. So maybe we could look at a PRA here and see if that's advantageous for us. So looking at his PRA, 29.5. He has points, rebounds, and assists at 29.5. It seems low. He's covered this in 8 out of his last 10 games. Head-to-head matchups, he's covered this in 5 of his last 7 games against Denver. Looking at his last 5, he's not on a minutes restriction. I don't believe he's injured. It just seems quite low to me. So I'm going to have to investigate Jimmy Butler now. Jimmy PRA. Okay, so that'll be interesting. And let's jump into Bam Adebayo. See what's going on over here. You can get him at 19.5 or 18.5. But let's check out the plus money play. 6 out of his last 10 games, he's covered this. He's got a good matchup against Denver. And he's covered in 6 of his last 7 games against the Denver Nuggets. God damn. So I don't mind this. This is looking pretty good so far. To think, there was only 3 players available in this game, and I like 2 of them. So I look at a Bam Adebayo to what we're seeing. Rebound-wise, his line's at 10.5. 5 of his last 10. Difficult matchup against Denver. He's covered in 3 straight, 4 out of 7 overall. So I don't hate it, but I definitely like his points prop a little bit more. So I'll look into that a bit further. And then we jump into the very last game. It's the Washington Wizards versus the Lakers. The Lakers played against the Clippers today, the last game. So they're on a back-to-back. Obviously, LeBron and Anthony Davis will be game-time decisions in this one, so there's barely any markets available. So you're going to have to come back to this video, check the pin comment to see what I land on, because there's only Tyus Jones, Denny Advia, and Kyle Kuzma available to bet on. Denny Advia has a game-time decision too, so let's just check out Tyus Jones and see where this ends up. Now, Tyus, matchup's not bad. He's covered his points prop here in 8 of his last 10 games. Yet to play the Los Angeles Lakers over the past few seasons, but I don't hate that points prop. Assist-wise, his line is at 9.5. This is crazy. Now, I know he's been racking it up lately, but 9.5 for this boy, sheesh, not too bad. This could be a let-up spot for the Lakers, though. The line's at minus 9.5 for Los Angeles. I have a feeling that the Wizards will keep it closer than that. But, look, I don't bet sides, totals, and lines because I'm not good at it. So, he's, 5 out of his last 10, or 5 out of his last 6, he's covered his assist prop. 9.5, very steep, but he's been getting it done lately. And in terms of rebounds, ain't nobody fucking with that. So what I have been playing for Tyus Jones when I do play him is points plus assists, right? So even though his assist line is at 9.5, his points prop has dropped down a little bit. So 21.5 for Tyus Jones. I don't mind that whatsoever. He's covered that in 8 of his last 10, and he's covered in 12 of his last 20. So his recent form is much better. Denny Ardbia, game time decision. I wonder if that makes it better or worse for him. Let's check out how he plays without Denny. Yep. So without Denny, in February or this season, he's played 3 games without Denny. Or OKC and Cleveland, he went under. With Denny in the lineup, Tyus Jones has covered this in his last 6 games. 7 games. Sorry, my apologies. Counting is not my forte. So, yeah, because if Denny's not there, there's one less option for him to pass the ball to. Denny can catch that ball and drive. He runs the floor very well, can make some shots too. So they've got a good partnership there. So Tyus Jones is one to consider. If Denny is playing, Tyus Jones points and assists, I reckon taking the over is a great play. If he's out, I'm not saying take the under, but just bet. Looking at Denny, he's covered his points line in 6 of his last 10. His head-to-head form against the Lakers, he's struggled. He's gone under in both games. Assist-wise, 3.5. 3 of his last 10 struggled against the Lakers. Rebound-wise, 7.5. That seems high. He's actually covered in 6 of his last 10, and he has covered in 1 of his last 2 against the Lakers. Not confident betting on Denny. Kyle Kuzma was an ex-Laker. He's been in Washington for quite some time, so I don't know if you still hold grudges against your old team after a few years, but Kyle Kuzma, his point line's 21.5. He's covered in 6 of his last 10. The matchup's not a bad one. Kyle Kuzma has covered this line in his last 2 games against the Los Angeles Lakers. Assist prop, that line's at 3.5. He's only hit this in 3 of his last 10, 1 of 2 against the Lakers. His rebound prop is at 8.5. He's only hit this in 2 out of his last 10. So I think, why is this rebound line at 8.5? And against the Lakers, well, he did have 16 rebounds the last time he played the Lakers, but that was in December of 2022. So 8.5 seems like a very steep line for me, given he's only hit this line in 25% of games this season. 8.5 is ridiculously high. The matchup is difficult. He had 1 good rebounding game against Los Angeles. So obviously I'd be leaning to the under on Kyle Kuzma, but Kyle Kuzma always finds a way to absolutely ram me. I'm trying to swear less on YouTube because I've been getting emails from YouTube saying, pull it back. You got to cut back on the swearing, mate. So, yeah, but Kyle Kuzma always finds a way to screw me. I don't mind his points prop. I know I don't like betting on Kyle Kuzma, but I don't mind his points prop. Lakers on a back-to-back. They just had a big game against the Clippers. Could be a letdown spot. I think the Wizards do keep it close. And if they're to keep it close, Kyle Kuzma has to have a big game. I just want to check his games with and without Denny Ardbia. So if Denny doesn't play, he's covered in 3 of his last 5. With Denny in the lineup, Kyle Kuzma, 6 of his last 10, 3 out of his last 5. So it's not a massive change, to be honest. But yeah, I'll definitely be leaning the over for Kyle Kuzma points at the moment. But I'll look into it, see if there's any other juice to come. All right, lads. That was a pretty look. That I was going to say that went quicker than I thought it would be, but as I look up and I see that I've been recording for 1 hour and 10 minutes, probably not. But I do hope you guys love the content. I don't normally do this, but I ask, please like the video, smash the subscribe button. For a lot of people, this is probably the first time you're seeing this. Our goal is to get 4,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Based on current trends, we should be able to get that within the next week, but I need your support to do that. The more likes, comments, subscriptions that we get, the more likely that YouTube's going to push this video out to other sports bettors. A lot of great comments. I'm a hidden gem, apparently, for the sports betting community. And if that's true, smash that like button and push this video out to others. If this was the first time you've seen outlier.bet and you feel like I did go through it quite quickly, you could always sign up to Outlier, 7-day free trial. You can play with it. You can take your time and find your own bets. I promise you, in sports betting, outside of hitting a monster parlay, regardless of who gave you the bets, there's nothing better than doing your own research, figuring out your own plays, making your own assumptions, placing that bet, and then cashing it. Not only do you know that you were right and you did all the work for it, but you've also made yourself a little bank. So if you're interested, check out Outlier. If not, just come back and watch me every single night because I'll be taking you all through it. If you guys want to see more of my content, just click on the video up here. More content from me, dropping it on the daily. But look, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.